Okay, great. Well, just want to welcome everyone to the Task webinar. My name's Steve. I'm the CEO of Task, and today we're very excited to have Marc Buckley presenting to you. Marc's going to be providing some insights into how businesses can embrace the UN SDGs with an uplift to profit as well as planet and people. So Marc is an advocate for the SDGs. He's a UN advisor and a network member of the World Economic Forum. And we're very, very chuffed to be working with him today. Before I hand over to Marc, I just want to run through a couple of items. First, can everyone please check the Q&A button that you should see on the Zoom toolbar at the bottom? Hey, thanks, Susie. So I see Susie just typed a hi, and please do put questions in there as Marc's presenting. Get the questions in there. We'd like this to be interactive. What we're going to do is, as you can see, I'm just giving an introduction. I'm going to hand over to Marc. We're going to have a dedicated time to push through, to work through some of the questions and answer as many as we can. During the presentation, if you ask questions that seem useful to ask at that point in time during the presentation, I'll ask them through to Marc, because I think it's good that we have a bit of back and forth while the presentation's going on. So, questions, people, we would greatly appreciate them. The second thing is, before we start, we're going to run a quick poll, and I will launch it now. And we've got a quick roundtable poll, and we just want to get information from you quickly in terms of what's driven you to attend this webinar and what's your level of understanding around the SDG. So if everyone can, that should have appeared on everyone's screen. Marc, are you seeing this?
I am.
Great.
I can't see the other chat window, but I can see the poll.
Okay, we got 25 out of 34.
On mine, it says hosts and panelists can't vote, so it looks like I'm excluded from the voting.
Yeah, I was able to enable that. I thought that would be cheating.
Yeah, we don't want to cheat.
Okay, we got 30 out of 34. I just give it a couple of seconds more, and I think that's good. We've got a useful poll there. We've got 30 people that have come into the poll. So that's we just had one more. Great. So Marc, I mean, there's the result. Let me just share the results. I think I need to share the results.
Perfect.
So there you go. I mean, key driver, not by a huge margin, but 42%. It's about improving business performance. And then in terms of level of understanding, then we've got an audience who are confident of their knowledge. So that's good to know.
Great.
Okay, so let me hand over to Marc. And I'll stop sharing my screen. Marc,
right, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you. Welcome everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar. It's going to be informative. I'm glad that we got a majority of the poll results in advance. You want to improve your business. I believe there's probably questions about business modeling, and most of you are confident in your knowledge. I hope to give you new information today about a new decade of action. Welcome to 2020. It's taken off with a extremely fast pace with a lot of historical, and we're out of shaming and being a death of action, where we're going to move. Some great things happen already this year. And want you to realize this is the first catalog image of our Earth. It's called Earthrise, taken in December 24th, 1968. And
Mark,
yes.
I can't see your screen at the moment, just so you know.
Oh, okay, let me share it again. Sorry about that. I think we lost it when I switched over. Can you see it now, Steve?
Yeah, just switch the presentation to full screen and it's good.
Can you see my screen? Great. Sorry about that, everyone. So basically, we're in a decade of action, 2020, and we're going to go pretty fast. This is about a 40-minute presentation, and I have a lot of slides and a lot of information to cover. I want to make sure that you are on board and you understand where we're at. We're 5 years already into the Sustainable Development Goals, which started in 2015. Now we're at 2020, and we have 10 years left to go to achieve the. Start with you want to get to speed to make sure that you're truly in the know about the Sustainable Development Goals. This image, the first catalog image of our Earth, Earthrise, was taken by accident. We were actually rounding the moon, heading back towards Earth, and the Apollo craft by accident turned and saw this image. And if you heard the chatter on the Apollo craft at that time, you would hear them say, "Get me some color film," because they only had black and white film in the camera. They weren't planning on taking this image at all. They got some color film in the camera, and they got this first catalog image December 24th, 1968. And it was the beginning of the environmental movement of seeing our Earth and our world in a different light. It was all done by accident, and I show it for a couple different reasons. This is the thin blue atmosphere that protects our Earth and is surrounded by our planet. And we are treating this atmosphere like an open sewer. Every day, the energy trapped by man-made global warming pollution is equivalent to 500,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs going off every day, 365 days a year. So that was just one Hiroshima class size atomic bomb going off, but imagine that 500,000 times a day, 365 times a year. Greenhouse gas emissions are silent. They're not visible in most places in the world, and we can't see them and smell them. But if you were to experience the greenhouse gas emissions that we dump into our atmosphere today, like this atomic bomb, I believe that you would be called to action. By the second, you would be moved to do something. And I just want you to be clear that we're treating our atmosphere, our planet, like this open sewer, and we need to change our business models and the way we operate. And so most climate speakers, activists, they show you this image of the Earth, and this is the blue marble. This is the second catalog image of our Earth taken by NASA, because they want to show you that there's no nations, no borders, that there's this thin blue atmosphere, that we're all on the same planet going in the same direction. But I don't show it to you for that reason. I show it to you for two different reasons. One, I want you to be closely connected with our planet and our Earth, and to realize that you're an integral part, whether you're a business or an individual, of our planet and the well-being and state of our planet, because it is the source of all your energy and your needs and your resources for your own survival. And to have this connection and this feeling as an integrated part of a symbiotic Earth is the same profound overview, cosmic perspective that only 500 people have had by seeing our planet live from outer space. They're all say that they've had this profound change in their life. But the most important reason I show you this image is because how do we have this image? This image is only because of innovation. Had we had not gone to the moon with emerging technologies, the latest innovations and computing power, we would not have this image. We have up to the date, real-time live data on our planet. What's going on, the surface temperature, the blue marble data, the biosphere data, the soil precipitation and moisture data of our planet. We have live, real-time, up to the date information, geospatial data on our planet, the lifeblood, the pulse of what's going on in our world. We're learning that some of this data is now being also collected and monitored on what's going on with COVID-19 and other things on our planet, not just sheer data and geospatial, but how movements and viruses are spreading and things are going on our planet. This is vital that you understand that if we did not have these emerging technologies and this innovation, we would still be in the dark on this environmental movement, on what's going on our planet. And we would be far behind on creating solutions and coming up with ways to save ourselves. I want to tell you a story about a good friend of mine, Dr. Bertrand Piccard. He is the owner of Solar Impulse and 1000 Solutions, two wonderful companies. Solar Impulse, you might know him as the first man to fly around the world in the first solar airplane. And 1000 Solutions, a company that comes up with and supports innovators and entrepreneurs who come up with solutions that solve our global grand challenges. Now, this is an image at COP24 in Katowice, Poland. The first time I saw him after he flew around the world in the solar airplane. And I want to tell you two quick stories. The first one is, as I went up to him, I said, "Congratulations, you did it. How was it? Tell me all about it. I'm so proud of you." And he said, "Mark, it was unbelievable. It was surreal. Have you ever ridden in a smart car?" And I said, "Yeah, just about a week ago, I was in Italy and I rode in a smart car, and it was totally electric and very silent. I couldn't hear anything going on outside. I didn't hear the motor running, and it was surreal." And he said, "Imagine that times 1000. He said, "I'm up in the Solar Impulse in that plane, and what we do is we take it like a glider. We take the propellers and the solar panels and charge them up, and we climb just as high as we can to the highest elevations where the atmosphere is very thin. And then we turn off the motors and the propellers, and we do a gradual long glide and just glide down very, very, very slowly." And he says, "I was in the middle of this glide, and I looked around to the left and to the right and at the panel on my plane, and I saw the solar panels and all this gadgetry and this new latest technologies and the suit I was wearing and the cockpit." And he said, "I had this moment, I felt like I was from the future, a man from the future, from outer space almost." He says it was a surreal, weird feeling. And this was a long gradual glide, so there was more than minutes, hours of a glide. And he said, and then I came to myself again and I looked around and I said to myself that solar panels have existed for a long time. Airplanes have existed for a long time. All this technology has been around for a long time. I'm just the first to put it all together. I'm living in the now. Everybody's living in the past and outdated technologies. And the second story that I want to tell you before I show you this clip from Bertrand Piccard is that he was trying to put the solar panels on the wings of the airplane and on top of the airplane in the housing, and so that he could get the most solar fuel efficiency out of those panels to charge up the propellers and the batteries to go on this journey. And he said as he was trying to make a plane, he went to every major wing builder for aircraft, for airplanes, and asked them if they could help him to do this, and all of them said no. And he was all kind of feeling disillusioned and upset and kind of like didn't know what to do and how he was going to make it work, when he was speaking to a shipbuilder. And he told his dilemma to a shipbuilder who makes sails on ships, and they told him that they didn't see why it couldn't be done, and he went to a shipbuilder to build his solar impulse planes. So we need to think differently. We need to be shipbuilders and pioneers. And now I'd like to show you what Bertrand Piccard said to Ban Ki-moon at the United Nations at the signing of the Paris Agreement.
Mark, just so you know, we don't get the audio from the video.
Oh no.
It looks great though.
Okay, so my question is, first, we kind of, I heard that nobody could hear the audio on that video. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. And we just what we'll do is we'll share that video out. Joe just requested it, so we'll send that out after the webinar. Don't worry.
It's going to be a problem though, because we've got several videos that I want to show, especially on the reporting. So how can we go about making sure that we
Can you talk over the video?
I can. So basically that was, I can't talk over all the videos, and I have several videos that we'll probably have to skip then. But basically that was Ban Ki-moon at the signing of the Paris Agreement with Bertrand Piccard live from Solar Impulse, telling them about the clean technology revolution. And he was asking the UN and all the countries to be pioneers and to make the transition to not only the digital transition, but the clean technology transition to renewable energies and different ways of doing and conducting business. This innovation and form of moonshot thinking to do things that have maybe never been done before, like having a solar airplane, Bertrand Piccard and myself and many others still have family and employees and relations around the world, as our world is one place. It's a very global world, and we will continue to travel. So how can we do that without harming our planet and our environment? Well, we need to come up with this clean technology revolution and come up with different ways to do things. And that type of thinking and that type of action is not only the clean technology revolution, but it's also been called moonshot thinking. It's thinking of ways to do things differently without hurting our planet. And so I make a joke after this video is that who has the better bonky moonshot than this? Because it is a true moonshot, and here is the wonderful man who was a big push in the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. I want to let you know, and most people who know about the SDGs still don't know this, it's the world's first ever global moonshot, Earthshot action plan ever. You have to imagine more than, excuse me, more than 193 countries came together for the first time ever and all agreed on the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. I want you to know that that's unheard of, that's unprecedented, let alone one or two countries come together to agree on where they're going to go to lunch or what kind of adaptation plans they're going to have or what kind of contributions they're going to make. But to have more than 193 countries come together and agree on the Paris Agreement to keep our planet below 1.5 degrees of warming and the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 is unprecedented. It is a historical event that occurred in 2015, and for most people, it went by the wayside. They didn't understand how to understand it and how to look at that. And so I want you to know that when we were presented with the Sustainable Development Goals, we were presented with them like this, very linear and lateral, laid out from 1 to 17. We didn't know how to understand them. We didn't know who they're for. Are they for countries? Are they for companies? What are all these colorful colors? Do we pick one? Do we pick two? How do we understand them? And I have to apologize that we were presented to them in the wrong way. And there is a reason behind and method and system the way the Sustainable Development Goals were come up with. And I'd like to explain that to you today so that you can have a better understanding. For the United Nations, I wrote the Sustainable Development Goal Manifesto. This manifesto is a vision of what a world can look like by 2030 if we reach all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement of 1.5 degrees cap of warming. I want you, before I read this to you, to close your eyes and envision what a world would look like or feel like for you once you're standing there. Have we achieved all these goals? Imagine a world where there is no poverty and zero hunger. We have good health and well-being, quality education, and full gender equality everywhere. There is clean water and sanitation for everyone. Affordable and clean energy has created decent work and sustainable economic growth. Our prosperity is fueled by investments in resilient industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and that has reduced inequalities. We live in sustainable cities and communities, and responsible consumption and production has healed our planet. Climate action has stopped and reversed the warming of our planet, and we have flourishing life below water and abundant, diverse life on land. We enjoy peace and justice through strong institutions and have built long-term partnerships for the goals. Now, the reason this manifesto exists is to give you a vision, a feeling, an understanding of what a world can look and feel like and is like in 2030 if we reach all those goals. And so I hope that you were able to feel that that's a place that you might like to live in, that might be more equal, and that is the better place with better structure and frameworks for everyone. And here is the true way we should look at the Sustainable Development Goals. Not linear, laid out from 1 to 5, or 1 to 17, but here as a wedding cake, a pie, a chart. I want you to know, when I tell people I'm a Sustainable Development Goal advocate, many times they'll say, oh, I like number 1, no poverty, red, it's my favorite color. And I say to them, that's great. That's absolutely fabulous. I'm glad they know about the Sustainable Development Goals, but it's virtually impossible for you to pick one Sustainable Development Goal and only work on that and not touch on the others, because they're all a system. So they're all tied together as a system, integrated and play upon each other, but they're all tied to agriculture, food, and beverages, all 17 of them. They're all tied to production, the way we produce things. So the way it's laid out here is with the biosphere on the bottom. And the biosphere is how we produce anything, from computers to cell phones to cars to food. And we need life below water, life on land, clean water and sanitation, and climate action. We need the resources to be able to produce these things. And so if we don't take care of that biosphere layer, we won't be able to do anything for the society or the economy to do any production at all. And so we need to look at things and the Sustainable Development Goals more with a systems approach to see how they connect and how the hierarchy functions within the Sustainable Development Goals. This chart came out by Johan Rockström and the Stockholm Resilience Center in Stockholm and the EAT Forum and Foundation, and was presented to Ban Ki-moon in December, but it was a little bit before the actual SDG framework came out, and it was too short, but now it's been widely accepted, and so I want you to see that. The other thing is this is something that you might see before. Did you want to say something, Steve?
Yeah, Mark, I was just going to, Susie has asked a question on the previous slide saying, is there a reason why the biosphere layer then wasn't numbered 1 to 4?
Yeah, because they were come up with a design agency in the Nordics that came up with the Sustainable Development Goals, and this is how they laid them out, very linear and lateral. And since then, there's been more slides and things that I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes of how we can look at the SDGs as a system, as a goal, different pyramids, and how they interconnect to each other. Sorry. The way, let's take, for example, the example that I gave. If you picked number 1, no poverty, and said that was the one you were going to work on, you would need to know that it's virtually impossible for you to not also touch on good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, zero hunger, life below land, life on land, or life below water and life on land, clean water and sanitation, climate action, responsible consumption and production, because those are all tied to poverty, how people are affected by poverty and get out of that are all tied to those other goals. So you're automatically touching on those. And if you were to reverse it with quality education or zero hunger, the same would be true of how they're connected, which I'll talk about in a few slides. But this might be familiar to you as well. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is another pyramid or chart that we might be familiar with, but it's the needs, the physiological needs of humanity. It's our needs. And if you look at the bottom 2 layers, breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, excretions, the safety layer, security of body, employment, resources, that's the biosphere layer, the mortality, the family, security of the family and health and property. Those are our basic needs. So the Sustainable Development Goals are an infrastructure for our basic needs, how we can evolve and how we can have resilient, desirable futures. And that's also why I wrote the manifesto, so you can envision on how they tie and apply to you. This is the Sustainable Development Goal dashboard. And maybe because my image is up on the screen, you can't see the full top. This was taken in 2017, and it lists the OECD countries. You see Finland has 5 green out of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. They're ranked as 3 out of 157. Germany has 3 out of 17. They're ranked 6 out of 157. And then you see Italy has 0. You see UK has 2, and the United States, no surprise there, has 0 out of 17. This was in 2017. Here's the updated dashboard in 2019. Came out in September. You see how the ranking changed. Denmark, 3 out of 17, jumped to number 1 out of 162 countries. Germany dropped from 3 out of 17 SDG accomplishment in green to 0. Stayed and remained at 6 though. Italy jumped up and had 1 out of 17 in the green. But I want you to know, and the United Kingdom dropped down as well. But I want you to know, and that's why I included the image on the right with the SDGs and the Earth in the middle, is the reason I show you the Earth in the beginning is to put into perspective where we're at and where we're going and what it means. It doesn't matter if Denmark, Germany, and Italy are all green, 17 out of 17, if not the rest of the world is on board with the Sustainable Development Goals and also green and also making efforts to move in that direction. So it's important to have this SDG indicator and to know it on a country level and how it's progressing with politics. But in the long run, it doesn't matter until we get everybody on board. And that's really number 17, partnership for the goals and how we can come together and progress. Here's some for Thailand and Asia. That's where you're at, Steve, and Bhutan, and some different progresses there that people might have questions on. I see that you have a question. Go ahead and ask it.
Yeah, it just seemed appropriate. Eleanor has asked a question, which is, how was this data collected?
There's a couple different sources for the data. So the country data is self-collected by the countries. It's voluntary, and some countries haven't always reported every year or on time. But it's the UN country specific that does the reporting on the country statistics, and then there's several other partners that help those countries to get the data. And I'm going to also go into a little bit more about the SDG dashboard and how you can go there to get information and also where the data comes from. That's more specific into the report. But there's also the dashboard where you can see it live as it's updated yearly and get some new information. And it tells you where the sources, how the reporting is done, and things like that. So I will definitely go further into that as well. I just wanted to set up right now so that I could do a deep dive into the direction that the world has taken. So now that was a video, and you couldn't hear the sound on that, correct, Steve?
Well, Mark, we've had there's been a couple of comments which have told us how you share your sound. I think what you need to do is, if you stop sharing your screen, and when you click share, at the bottom where the frame comes up to authorize sharing, at the bottom there should be a tick box. Yeah, stop sharing your screen a second. At the bottom there should be the green share, and you should see a red stop share on the Zoom. And reshare.
All I'm seeing is my image and your image, and mute, stop video, mute my audio, unpin video, rename, hide self.
There should be a stop screen share. If you actually click share, because you can then share it again. If you don't see it, we don't need to worry, just carry on. But
maybe it's because you're recording at the same time, because I'm not seeing. Okay, now hold on just a second. Stop share.
Yeah, great.
Now as I go to share,
in the bottom bar it should say
full screen and share computer sound.
Yeah, that's the one. Tick that and share again.
Do I want to optimize for full screen video clip?
No idea. I leave it because the video works previously, but that share computer sound should fix the issue.
Okay, sorry about that, you guys.
Yeah, no worries. Don't worry.
So now you can see my screen again?
Yeah, screen again. See if the video works. Perfect.
Global Decade of Action started this year, obviously. We will have September 2020 in New York and around the world, the Global Day of Action. But there will also be some large pushes in data and information, some new historical unprecedented actions and measures taken in place around the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. This is the 75th anniversary of the United Nations General Assembly and the 50th anniversary of many other sub-interagency UN organizations. And the World Business Council for Sustainable Development is also 25 years this year. So there's a lot of wonderful things happening and beginning at the beginning of this year that actually started last year again in September at the Climate Action Summit, the Sustainable Development Goal Summit in New York and around the world. Okay, so now the reason I show you this image is that most people kind of know a little bit about the Sustainable Development Goals, but they don't know the monies behind the Sustainable Development Goals. The way they came up with the Sustainable Development Goals is a form of backcasting and systems dynamic modeling. They took a point in time where our planet would be a certain degree of warming, and initially it was 2 degrees of warming, and then they did a back casting from that point of what kind of actions and goals, targets and indicators were needed to reach that by 2030. In that process, there's also a dollar amount, and that dollar amount is or was 90 trillion US dollars, and today it's a little bit over 94 trillion US dollars. But to put that into perspective, if you do a high carbon scenario or a business as usual, we will spend 89 trillion US dollars by 2030 regardless. What that means is when a building gets dilapidated and needs to be torn down and rebuilt, that's what we do. When we need to replace the tires or buy something new, that's what we do. It's this high carbon scenario with coal, oil and gas, fossil fuels, and not much sustainable development at all. Just kind of spending it as we need it. But by 2030, we will have spent 89 trillion US dollars regardless. Now, this 95 trillion US dollars that are needed to reach the sustainable development goals by 2030 are much different. That's about 6 trillion US dollars a year, and spent hopefully very consistently year over year to 2030 to reach that goal of the sustainable development goals. But it's what we call a low carbon scenario, where we use renewable energies, resilient infrastructures, and different procedures to get to that. And this dollar figure comes from several sources: the World Bank, the WHO, the United Nations, in many different areas, and it's constantly being updated. So initially, when the Paris Agreement came out, it was supposed to be 2 degrees of warming. And then we made this great ambition to go 1.5. And so these numbers, because there were so many models and scenarios ran out in this backcasting, was adjusted slightly to meet the 1.5 degree target and to readjust the costs on that. Any questions, Steve? I see the.
Yeah, I mean, not questions on this specifically. So the questions we have queued, I'll keep to our Q&A session for the moment.
Great. So I just want you to know that this, the dollar amount behind the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, I can tell you the first 3 years. The first year we were under 386 billion, so we weren't even in a trillion, so we were well under 6 trillion for that year. The second year we did 898 billion, still under a trillion. So the first 2 years well under the 6 trillion a year, and then the third year we actually did over a trillion, 300 billion US dollars, but still well under. Now we've ramped up the whole process, and a lot have come on board, and businesses are realizing how much value is by changing our business model and what a really resilient, desirable future it creates for us all. Probably going to go real fast on this. This is Buzz Aldrin, and you see here, this is his general declaration form for moon rock that he brought back from the moon. The man took the latest emerging technology, data, and computing power, and he went to the moon, and then he came back and he filled out an analog form, typewritten, hand-signed, for a customs declaration. Then he filled out a handwritten, typed, and signed travel voucher to be reimbursed for his travel to the moon. But yet he just used the latest computing power, the latest technologies to get there, and came back and went right back to an analog system that didn't communicate at all with that space travel, with that great ambition to go there. And we see that a lot. And the reason I bring up this point is that in our world, we sometimes lag far behind on the digital revolution, on the emerging technologies, on how we do reporting, on how we get on board. And there are numerous reasons why. We probably were presented with the Sustainable Development Goals in the Paris Agreement in the wrong way. We didn't understand how to look and think and understand about them. But we also didn't have that transition to the new clean technology revolution to stay up to speed with our exponentially growing world. And instead of continuing this, we need to start thinking in a different way. Instead of eating our resources, how can we live within planetary boundaries in the safe operating space of our world, and think and look at our planet in a much different way to keep up to speed with its ever-growing, changing way. And so I always ask the burning question, and the burning question is, WTF? Now, a lot of you will think, oh no, he's starting to swear. It's not the swear word, it's what's the future? So that's the true burning question that we need to ask. Where are we going? That's why I had you envision what a future would look like if we reach the Sustainable Development Goals and the different things with that. But I want you to know what's the future. I want you to think about it, and what's the path that we're currently on taking us to? What does the future present when we have that? And so I want to give you a little analogy. So if you slow down or reduce your speed while driving on the highway in the wrong direction, you are only going slower in the wrong direction. The question is, and the reason I give you this analogy is that a lot of companies have these annual reports and these statements that they make that by 2020, we're going to have reduce our carbon emissions by 60%, by 70%. By 2030, we're going to go plastic free. They have these noble statements and things that they say in their annual reports, but what does that mean? If a company tells you they're reducing their carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions by 20%, 30%, 60, 70, what they're telling you is absolutely nothing. They're telling you they're going slower in the wrong direction. Now, the reason I give you this analogy is for a couple reasons. One, not only must we stop and reverse our direction and change how we function in our business operating procedures and how we see the Sustainable Development Goals and the path and the plans that 193 countries have put together for us to see resilient, desirable futures, a new framework for humanity to live in on this planet. But if the entire world stopped today and reversed their direction, every company and business did right, does this all go away? Lao Tzu said it best, if you don't change direction, you may end up where you are heading. So if the entire world were to stop and reverse their direction, does all this plastic and pollution just disappear and say, oh, the world stopped, boom, it's gone? No, it doesn't. It needs to be cleaned up. It needs to be removed. All the fires and the greenhouse gas emissions, they are still there warming our planet. Did you know that less than 1% of all the plastic that we've ever put into our planet is still here on our planet? It's just here in a different form. It's only gone because we burned it and turned it into a greenhouse gas emission by burning it. But the rest of all the plastic that we've ever produced, less than 1% is still here on our planet. And it's warming our planet. And so by just going slower in the wrong direction, by reducing our emissions, by reducing our plastic production, doesn't get rid of and clean up or stop our planet from warming. When you throw it away, I want you to think that there's no way, and I don't want you to wait. There are no time remaining. We're already 2 seconds before midnight. There's not even 5 minutes or 10 minutes before midnight. We're on an exponential path, not only with the COVID, but with many things regarding climate change. And so we need to take different actions. We need to embrace complexity science. We need to embrace systems thinking and complexity of our world and how things are interlinked, like the Sustainable Development Goals and systems, and how the only way to solve global grand challenges is through systems thinking. In 2018, all international organizations in our world switched to systems approach or systems thinking in order to solving global grand challenges. The UN, the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and many others. This is not something new. Actually, it was around since 1972 with the World Model 3 and MIT that came up with the World Model 3 and the limits to growth model. And I'm just going to go through really quickly a lot of different systems models for businesses and systems thinking that are out there and available. So you just don't think I'm making this up, that you know that there's tools available for you out there. This is the limits to growth model, one scenario run out by the World Model 3. And as you see, you set up those variables and run that out. And then there's a limit to growth where it drops off and declines. And the limits to growth, World Model 3 ran out thousands of different scenarios and variables, and all of them showed a limit to growth and a drop and decline if things didn't change. Do you have a question, Steve? I see my screen flashing. Did they say I should continue to go longer, or?
Yep. It was 75%, 78% saying let's go longer. That's great.
Great. I'm going to go really fast because I'm getting into the modeling and the things. I'm just going to go through a lot of different systems, and then we're going to get into the specifics of reporting and modeling before I stop for questions.
Yeah, one question that I've got, which is, well, more, are we going to, I know that when we spoke before, you've given some very useful examples of businesses that have incorporated the SDGs into their business models. And I seem to remember you say they kind of did it begrudgingly, or they did it for marketing flim-flam, and it ended up turning into, for these businesses, a golden goose. Do you have that as part of your presentation, or is that something you bring in extra?
Part of my presentation coming up here
okay.
in a minute. And it's rather extensive, and now we're really going to get into the reporting, the why, and that. But I want you to know where we're at now. We're in this systems dynamic modeling, systems thinking of how we look at our business models. And if you see here, this is a business Canva laid out with, on top of it, a systems dynamic model where you can run out thousands of different scenarios. So this value proposition, key performance indicator, this value proposition business Canva that a lot of companies use as a one-pager business model and canvas, you can actually lay out a systems dynamic model right over the top of it and run out thousands of different scenarios to see where the bottlenecks, where the performance indicators, where the problems are, how you can improve, how you can not really predict the future, but more accurately know where your roadmap and your goals are going. And there's just a plethora of palette and tools available for systems thinking that I just want you to know that can be used in a global food system map. They can be used in EU policy, immigration, climate change, and oil prices.
Mark, quick question. Yes. On this, because I mean, Joanna's saying that this bit on systems is great. This is all linked. We're going to be sharing the doc afterwards. We have a PDF to share, and we'll be letting everyone have a copy of that. Are you linking to some of these models in that?
I am, and then we also created a note with all the links in kind of a Google Docs note system. So basically it gives you all the websites and places you can go download, to use the tools, to get online, to start reporting. And I'm going to show a few of those websites that you can go to as well right after I finish this section on systems thinking and tools. And this section is basically already done. I just wanted to show you how the UN and the World Economic Forum have jumped on board and immediately put some tools online, not only visualization tools, but systems dynamic modeling tools online for people to use to map out the SDGs, to map them to your business, to a model, to do different types of things that are online. There's some paid tools, there's some software tools that you can purchase, and then there's just a plethora of free open source. So as you know, the project for everyone is the Sustainable Development Goals. It's open source, it's transparent, it's for everyone. Everybody can use the Sustainable Development Goals and jump on board and apply them into their businesses. The only thing they can't do is use the UN United Nations logo along with the SDGs as like you're reporting that from the UN, unless you have a partnership agreement and their permission to do that. But everything else around the SDGs, the logos and that can all be used, the targets, the indicators, the tools, they're all open source, they're all transparent, they're for everyone. It truly is project for everyone, and there's a lot of private institutions coming on board to help with that. Here's a SDG interlinkage analysis and visualization tool where you can set different scenarios, parameters. It's pretty extensive. And I'm running out one. You can kind of see it moving here for Thailand. This is specifically for Thailand, and how that's moving around. And you can do some different visualizations. This is an unlimited growth on a finite planet systems dynamic model. And then you see how this right here is the World Economic Forum. If you take SDG number 12, responsible consumption and production, you see what other industries and what other areas are linked to that in a system. And on January 2018, the World Economic Forum at the forum, Klaus Schwab released his transformational maps directly on the website. And I'm just going through now a couple of those, SDG 13, and you can click on and see how they're interlinked in a system and what all different parts or facets of a system need to be addressed in order to solve those problems, in order to realize how to truly solve global grand challenges. You cannot just deal with one facet. Again, here's just different linkages and showing different ways of using visualization tools around the SDGs. Here's a link that we'll share as well, but you're welcome to take a screenshot or however you would like. Here's some free online and systems that you can use for systems dynamic modeling. Now, Peter Diamandis, he's the founder of X Prize and Singularity University. He's written a couple books, and these are just two, but there's a couple more that he's written as well, Bold and Abundance. And he said the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. I want you to know that that's absolutely true. And so when Steve said, you know, I have some examples of different things, this is from Unilever. For every dollar that they invested in nutrition towards the SDGs, they got a $16 return. By embracing the global goals and putting them into your business model and creating this push and drive towards a sustainable, resilient, desirable futures, you could generate 12 trillion of new business value a year. So if you remember what I told you, how much money is needed for the Sustainable Development Goals to be reached by 2030, that's an extra 6 trillion US dollars every single year of value a year that's added by applying those into your business, into your models. That's equivalent to 10% of the global GDP forecast by 2030. So that's a lot of money and a lot more than actually is needed. Now, I'm just tickling
Mark,
and
quick
scratching
question.
the surface here. Yeah,
Sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt. I was just going to say, what's the methodology to assess that market opportunity?
There's several different methodologies that are used from that. So it's mainly proof in the pudding. Those who have applied them already to their business models, who've already integrated them in their annual reports and started working towards the targets and indicators of the
Yep.
goals, are seeing some big response. And so Unilever was a pioneer in this area. And the biggest example that came from them was through the battle of Nestle and Unilever. There was supposed to be, I don't know if it was a merger or a buyout between the two companies. And you know that Nestle was, at the time, they have since changed, wasn't very big on the sustainable development goals or on protecting our planet, plastics, and many other things. And Unilever's far from perfect, but they also always had a very strong push with Paul Pullman, they call him Green Paul, who at the time was the CEO, to push towards sustainable business and how climate change is really affecting the green tea and different products for Unilever. That investment that they made showed not only social positive returns, but enormous profit returns, and created a resilience in their business model. But in that process of those two companies, Nestle and them competing for this, it was either a merger or buyout. What happened is society responded that they didn't like how Nestle was acting and the valuation of their stock, and that went drastically downhill when Unilever's climbed. And it wasn't just by implementing the SDGs, there was many things that factored into that. And so they gave us immediate feedback on that return on investment that they made towards sustainability and the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, and how it affected their bottom line and helped them in many ways. I want to tell you that in September of last year, 2019, if you look under Google search and type in moonshot sustainability, a couple things come up, but there's this new business ambition for 1.5 degrees of warming, the Paris Agreement, and the Sustainable Development Goals for our only future. There are 87 companies that came together and signed this business ambition, and they have a market cap of 2.3 trillion. I believe it went up to 2.4 just recently. Some more companies jumped on board. $1 trillion market cap, and they're leading the way towards a 1.5 degree future. Now that was pretty ambitious, and that was a nice thing. And then we had the business Avengers come out, where Mars, Alibaba, SAP, Salesforce, MasterCard, Coke, and different ones also jumped on board, along with Unilever, Google, to say we are proud to be business Avengers, and we're also going to move towards having the Sustainable Development Goals in and making a push to reach them by 2030.
Is you ready? More fire. You ready?
So then something happened that's might have went by the wayside that you didn't realize, and it was a historical precedence. This year in January, right before the forum in Davos, the World Economic Forum, Microsoft came out, and they came out with this $1 billion climate innovation fund they said they're going to, as a company, be carbon negative by 2030. But then they said something that most people didn't understand or grasp. And I mentioned it to you before, where I said it's not good enough to go slower in the wrong direction. We must stop and reverse our direction and actually clean up our world, leave it better than we found it. And that's this middle section. Microsoft said, since we have been in business, we're going to remove all our historical carbon emissions by 2050. Means that every product, every emissions, everything that they have, that they're going to remove it by 2050. That means that they're going to do everything possible to leave the world better than they found it by 2050 and create new technologies, clean tech, and new things that will change the path of how they do business in the future. And I actually think that's it's a high target by 2050. I actually believe that they'll reach it much sooner. Now, this is noble. The two on the left and the right, the 1 billion Climate Innovation Fund, the carbon negative by 2030, those are noble, ambitious. They didn't say they want to be carbon neutral. They said they want to be carbon negative by 2030. But the true one that's the most important and set the historical precedents was that they wanted to remove every impact, carbon emissions that they've had on our planet since they've been in business. And so at the time of this release, I said, mark my words, Google, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Apple are all going to come out with even greater ambitions. They're going to come out with even more historical precedences, because this has set the precedents historically. Never as a company before said or done this. And then February 14th, Delta Airlines, which is kind of a crazy move, but it's also kind of related to Bertrand Piccard, announced that it has a $1 billion plan to be the first carbon neutral airline. Well, there's talk of greenwashing and all sorts of other things around that, but it's also a historical precedence. There's other ways to be carbon neutral and to mitigate emissions in this type of a business. And they said they want to do that. They want to think about the future of flight and what they can do to continue to fly, to continue to get people to their families and to their businesses and to those things around the world without harming our planet in the process. And it's a step in the right direction. It's a step in the cleanup. And this was one other historical precedence which led to this one. Jeff Bezos, just a few days after that, on Valentine's Day, or on February 17th, maybe it wasn't Valentine's Day, but close, or that was Valentine's Day for Delta. And February 17, Jeff Bezos on Instagram, a kind of an unusual way to make a statement. He said, $10 billion Earth Fund, him as a person. So there's a lot of debate whether that's a lot for him, less than 1% or 1%, but it is another precedence. And I want you to know it's put us on an exponential roadmap. It's put us on just a linear growth on the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, to now we've hit that exponential curve, and enough businesses, enough things are happening and reporting is going on that we're starting to hit this exponential curve. And that's the true way how we're going to get ahead of this, because we've heard many things with the IPCC report and others that we're already behind. We haven't done enough. And we need that exponential function to get us ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was just going to say, just thinking about the time, if we push to Q&A in a couple of minutes, I've definitely got a few questions I want to be putting your way. So I was just going to say, let's go to Q&A, and if people have questions, do add them into the Q&A box inside Zoom. But yeah, Mark, please finish.
Great. I'm gonna really try to hurry because I haven't even got into the reporting yet. Now, I was basically telling you now that after Jeff Bezos, the report of it yesterday, we have 1,851 commitments on We Mean Business. about 1,230 companies with a $2.48 trillion market cap. So now we're seeing the numbers in the trillions. Then we have the World Benchmark Alliance, 2,000 companies who have $43 trillion in revenue in 74 countries, have 7 system transformations for a better world and reaching the SDGs. We're seeing all sorts of things going on. Now, how do we do all this, not just with the SDGs and this clean technology revolution? There's a great book that came out by Paul Hawken and many other scientists and experts. It was called The Drawdown, and the Drawdown review came out last month. And it's climate solutions for a new decade, updates of what we can do, and some high percentage activities that we can draw down our world, atmosphere, electricity, food and industry, very quickly, how we can reduce our sources and kind of get off of the finite resources into renewables. And go through a couple of those videos I'm going to skip and show them to you later. But when we talk about reporting and the Sustainable Development Goals, it is a small area. It's actually not that big, and it's not that overwhelming for people who are in the know and are concerned about the SDGs and sustainability. They will have seen some of these companies and organizations before, where you can go to get help to do reporting, to get the tools that you need. The big ones are the GRI, Global Reporting, Indexing and Standards, the Global Standard, the Gold Standard, the International Organization, the ISO for Standardization, World Benchmarking Alliance, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. There's many different places you can go for tools, tips, and tricks and help, and you can actually do your reporting and tools with all of these. And if you have the resources and wherewithal to do that, I would recommend going to each and every one of these to do your reporting and to take action. Some have a minimal fee, and some of them are actually totally free to do your reporting and to submit your annual reports and show what you're doing. GRI is probably the biggest one, and I'll give you on the notes on the Google Docs where you can log in and set up an account, and you can file your annual report on what you're doing towards the SDGs for, I believe, 35 euros, $35. And then you've got your first report on the GRI regarding your company and the Sustainable Development Goals. Here's a link that with details of where you go and how you sign up.
Whether it's mitigating the effects of climate change, giving everyone access to clean water, or ensuring that no child is forced to go to work instead of going to school, there's so much more we need to do to create a sustainable global economy. At GRI, we believe companies and other organizations have a critical role to play in addressing these problems. That's why, in the late 1990s, we pioneered sustainability reporting. Sustainability reporting is an organization's practice of publicly disclosing its broader economic, environmental, and social impacts. The GRI Sustainability Reporting Standards are the first global standards for sustainability reporting. They feature disclosures on a wide range of topics, such as energy use, diversity in the workplace, anti-corruption, and human rights, to name only a few. As a result, any organization can use the GRI standards to increase transparency with all of their stakeholders. This is the first step in transforming our global economy into one that's sustainable and inclusive. Reporting with the GRI standards can help you protect the environment and improve society while thriving economically. What's more, sustainability reporting can create a range of benefits for your organization, helping you improve stakeholder relations, enhance your reputation, and build trust. At GRI, we also offer engagement opportunities that can enhance those benefits. We support organizations throughout their reporting journeys. We set up training programs that explain how to establish a sustainability reporting process, and we offer services that help ensure reports are aligned with the GRI standards. Organizations can also join the GRI Gold community and connect with peers to develop solutions to shared challenges. And GRI also works with governments to promote smart sustainability policies and regulations around the world. For example, you can use GRI standards to show your contributions to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and to fulfill your reporting requirements under the EU Directive on Non-Financial Reporting. We also offer guidance on the alignment between GRI standards and other reporting efforts and international norms. So when you choose...
GRI is the main big standard. It works with the UN Global Compact. It's an important place to go, and I don't want to dwell on too many more videos that explain where you go and why is it important. There are several PDFs along with the notes on this presentation that I give that I've included, and Steve has also probably put them into a Google Docs or something that you can download later. But there are places to get information and knowledge about the analysis of the goals and the targets, integrating them into your corporate reporting and addressing your investor needs, which are highly important, that will be included. As you know, there are 169 targets. Some have been removed. And there is a big thing that I wanted to address that most people might not know. You might have heard about SDG washing. How do you prevent SDG washing? Well, Steve mentioned it earlier that I have a saying that fake it until you make it. There's many out there. I saw many this year at Davos when I was at the World Economic Forum. I heard them talking about the Sustainable Development Goals like they came out yesterday. And they've been out since 2015, and they're at a world organization and event and talking about like they came out yesterday. People should have the knowledge and understanding about them. And if you're taking them into your mouth and saying, okay, here's the SDGs and we're supporting them, there is something to that, because many companies have been out there and realized that if they start applying them, if they start talking about them, even though if they're kind of greenwashing or SDG washing, that they're going to see positive results come back. And then there's no need to fake it anymore. You put the time and effort in to really apply them to your business models and into your annual reporting, and you do actions and plans around that that show you this is a better business model. This is a better way of operating, and the results are much better. And it's kind of this fake it till you make it. Most of those I've seen turn in a very positive way, but there's some others that you really want to watch out for. You want to, how to prevent it is to integrate the SDGs into your business model. Don't cherry pick SDGs because they're all a system. Make sure that you include and connect them all as much as possible into your business model by using the targets and indicators as well to get more specific and drill down. Profiting on some SDGs while harming others. So you could be doing very well on picking one or two SDGs and promoting actions around that. But then there's 4 that you're actually hurting environment just as more. And so there's this imbalance. So it's okay that you might not reach all the SDGs, but it's important that you report that those are areas you need to improve on, that you're trying to work with others to find better actions on how to do that. You want to align all the targets and indicators in your process. Explain and show action to impact, report good and bad areas for improvement, and then make the full commitment to 2030 with yearly updates and reportings. It's a multi-year projects and actions leading towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And there is a process through the World Business Councils for Sustainable Development that says, first, we need to understand the SDGs, then we need to define priorities, set goals, integrate them in our business model and our reporting, and then make sure we have good reporting and communication so people know how to understand and what we're doing. There are several gold standards, sustained certification that you can go to act and to do different things. As I finish, I'm going to stop here, but I have four more slides I want to show you, Steve, that are real important. So the Better Business for Better World through the Business and Sustainable Development Commission really talks a lot about the Sustainable Development Goals and what the business case is for the global goals, what kind of CEOs and companies have come on board, how they can create a movement and develop an action agenda. But they're saying the business value generated by 12 systems changes opportunities. It's a $12 trillion a year extra opportunity. There are 60 hotspots or opportunities across 4 systems to generate business revenue and savings that equal to 10% of the forecast of the global GDP. And the value of the global goals business opportunities is located really in developing countries. There's 380 million jobs created by global goal business opportunities in the 4 systems by 2030. All sorts of sectors for almost any type of corporation, company, small, medium enterprise to generate business value and opportunities. There's also additional value opportunities in the trillions of US dollars. And so I just want you to know there's a lot of data and information and places and resources to go to. The next one that's really good is the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. They have 200 members, companies, 8.5 trillion combined revenues, 19 million employees, and 70 global network partners. They charge a fee to be part of them, but they have some great resources on how you can get some value added and improvements. They also created several tools like the Sustainable Business Hub for the SDGs and what are the essentials for business that they need to reach the SDGs. And I'm going to stop there because I could go on forever. I have tons of places and partnership opportunities where you could go to and how you do reporting, how you get into reporting. But I think we went over, and let's answer some questions.
Mark, thank you. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and it would be great to take some questions. I mean, just a few that have come up that would be good to go through. I mean, Deepa has mentioned, what's your opinion of someone like Bezos coming in with his contribution, but at the end of the day, it would be much better if he was just paying taxes as the same as everyone else. How do you feel about that in terms of his contribution, and is that greenwashing essentially?
I really don't have a strong opinion either way. I think that it's he's been doing things for a lot of years beforehand around that, and there's always room for improvement. So that's his comfort zone, and it was a personal thing, his own climate personal funds and Earth Fund that he created. It wasn't one done in conjunction with Amazon and coming out as a company regarding that. I would like to hope that as the leader of Amazon, that now that's set a precedence for them to create even a nobler and more bolder ambition for Amazon to come out and set some historical precedences and create some more monies on that. I can tell you something is better than nothing. So you can have no fund in one hand, and you can have the 10 billion Earth Fund in the other hand. One hand you have something, in the other you don't. And so I'm not a billionaire, so I don't think I couldn't say I think it's a step in the right direction, and he would be the only one to know if he could do more and even make greater impacts. I'd like to see him as a leader set the precedence to go in the right direction, set a precedence to leave the world better than you found it, and to make that clean technology revolution. I think in many things that he does in his businesses, there's a lot of clean tech and revolutionary things that have had a huge impact on the industry, good and bad. So I can't say either way. What I can say is there's a lot of companies out there that at one point are absolutely fabulous and do great things, and then at another point in time do absolutely horrific things. And I gave you an example of it in my presentation. So I spoke about the book, The Limits to Growth, and how they came up with the World Model 3, the systems, dynamic modeling, and systems thinking in 1972. That was paid for, the book and the report was paid for by the Club of Rome and the Volkswagen Foundation. Well, this climate Bible, or this systems dynamic modeling and way of thinking in systems, created basically what I call the climate Bible, the sustainability Bible, and tools for us to create more resilient, desirable futures and to avoid some of the catastrophes that we're kind of facing today. That wonderful, great report and knowledge and information that started on this environmental movement came out in 1972, was paid by the Volkswagen Foundation, which is the Volkswagen company. And then in 2015, the beginning of the Paris Agreement year and the Sustainable Development Goals, that same company had Dieselgate and cheated on millions of vehicles of emissions. And it was like they didn't even read the report or the book that they paid for.
Yeah.
And now they're, not only were they fined and things, now they're trying to come back. And so you see good and bad, you see rise and fall. And we just need to have more good and more positive wins and more positive actions than we do the greed or negative actions of that, and be in it for the long term for these. And I think that's about all I can say on that.
We just do two more questions before we close the webinar. One of the commonalities I can see in the questions is, a lot of these tools are great for larger organizations. We are talking to a lot of SMEs. What would you suggest for smaller organizations? How can they influence? What are the ways that they could be adapting the SDGs in a way that also helps them fulfill a more successful overall business model?
So I believe, first of all, they need to use in their business model, not only find every SDG that's applicable to what they do. And I've spoken to several businesses and they're like, oh, well, we only have 2 SDGs that apply to us. Well, it's absolutely not true. If you dive into the targets and indicators, you can realize that no matter if you're a service business or a production business, no matter how small or large you are, that there's many areas that you touch in your business in multiple areas of the Sustainable Development Goals, not only the targets and indicators as well. And that if you take the time to understand them, understand how to look at them, how they work towards your company, and apply them into your model, and then really make a push, a project to like a mission, a vision of that you let your customers, those clients, and those in your organization know what you're doing to get behind them. And how you might have 1 or 2 people only doing the reporting, but the dream or the vision of that organization is not a different organization. It's just one that is doing a different type of business model. It's more a sustainable, resilient future for your company. To be sustainable means to be around for future generations, to have resources to produce products in the future, to be able to pay your employees in the future. And we need to think that burning question, WTF, what's the future? The current model you're on, is it harming the world? Is it harming your employees? Or is it doing good? Is it leaving the world in a better place than it was found? And when it's done that, that value added return, the cost of goods sold, the production and efficiency of your company all goes up. That profit margin increases, and it's one that increases for the long term. It's one that can sustain itself for many generations. And that's really vital to understand, and that each individual company needs to do it for themselves, and take the time to. You cannot buy sustainability. So if you're a company let me give you an example. Coca-Cola bought a company that was pretty sustainable, Innocent. And the minute it was bought, Innocent wasn't that sustainable anymore. They changed their essence and their product packaging and the way they distribute it, and the product became a Frankenstein. It's because you cannot buy sustainability. Sustainability has to come from within. You have to integrate it into your core business model, your values, and communicate that to all your employees. And then you have to do reporting. And once you go out there and you do that, you're going to see that the return and the benefits are much greater than they were, even if you're greenwashing or not doing them at all. So, and you have a much better future.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again, Mark. I think probably time that we close out the webinar. I've got other questions I would like to be going through. We haven't gone into the whole COVID-19 pandemic, but we did have a question on how to continue to advance the SDGs. That came in from Leanne. I mean, possibly you'd like to say a few words on that. I mean, I just have this feeling that the word business as usual would be a recommendation. I mean, we're limited in what we can do with our activities, but the objectives don't really change. It's just the techniques of how we get there perhaps might change. I mean, would you like to share a few thoughts on that just before we do close down, as it's so topical right now?
Well, there's many other experts out there on the COVID-19 and that, but it really, you hit upon it. It's not business as usual. We need to think in resiliency. So to be resilient and have a resilient business that automatically has sustainability and deeply ingrained in it. But it means that your company is going to be around in resilient, desirable futures. Now, there's different forms of resiliency. There's 3 different types that you might be well versed in or know about. One is the resiliency if somebody mentally or physically abuses you, that you can bounce back and recover with that type of resilience if they swear at you. The second one is in a world that is very dystopian, there's acid rain, there's a lot of smog and greenhouse gas emissions, and the air's not, we have droughts and water shortages and whatever, that you still survive because you're wearing a spacesuit or a gas mask, or because you're kind of in this dystopian science fiction future of resiliency, but it's not very desirable. It's not a very beautiful area, place to live, and it's not green and nice air to breathe. Or there's resilient, desirable futures where we've still gone beyond the limits to growth, and we still have climate catastrophes and health problems and things, but we have enough resiliency built into the infrastructure of our world and systems that we can bounce back and enjoy a resilient, desirable futures going forward. And so I really believe it's not business, it's business efficiency, different models, more of this clean technology revolution, and thinking forward of how we have better business operations and functions. One great example that a lot of people don't know about, but the agriculture, food and beverage industry is 12,000 years old. And in those 12,000 years, we've had 5 innovations, maybe 6 if we count the microwave that are not enough. And it's the highest employer. It's the least digitized industry in the world. It's the least paid. It's the greatest exponential waste of production. And it's time we get up to speed of business efficiency and operating in a world that is moving exponentially, and one that will address the burning question, WTF, and create models that bring us into resilient, desirable futures instead of living in the past like Buzz Aldrin went to the moon, latest technology comes back and fills out a handwritten typed form to be paid to go there. We need to think with our world that's growing. We need to be an integral part of our world that's growing and use the tools available and the thinking to understand as global citizens how we can get there.
Marc, thank you so much. You're actually, I was just going to share my screen, but it's lovely to have you on the video. And I know on behalf of everyone that's been on this webinar, to say a big thank you for your time and sharing your knowledge here today. For people that would like to get in touch with Marc, you've probably seen his email already. It's marc@marcbuckley.earth. For anyone who wants to implement and measure SDGs inside their organization, then do chat to us at Task. We're at hello@task.io. And as we mentioned earlier, we will email out the PDF with the links from Marc's presentation. And once again, Marc, thank you very much.